there's advocacy and then there's action. And I think that you're somebody who has taken action, and I've got to keep my game up so that I can support your action.
Wow, guys, can you believe it? We're already over 20 episodes into Nick Speaks, but here's the truth. I couldn't have done it alone. The amazing team at Goodknight Podcasting Solutions has been with me every step of the way, from those early strategy sessions all the way to editing, promotion, and even helping me land guests. They've made it so all I have to do is show up, record, and focus on delivering the message. Kyle at Goodknight Podcasting Solutions tailors everything to your unique needs and is so creative to give you what you're looking for. But one thing's for sure, he gives 110% to help you create an incredible podcast. So if you've ever thought about starting your own podcast, now's the time. Hit the link in the show notes, set up a strategy session with Kyle, and get ready to take your podcast to the next level. Trust me, you won't regret it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the brand new installment of the Nick Speaks podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Comstock. This is the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. You guys, I'm so excited because today, for this episode, I have my producer as a guest, and I've told you guys many times I could not do this podcast every week without my producer, Kyle Goodknight. Kyle, I am so glad you're here. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate you having me on, and it's a long time coming. We've been talking about having me on for a while now. Now we're at episode 39, this would be, and we finally got it done, buddy.
Yeah, we did. You have been such a godsend to me, and you don't just do podcasts for me, you do podcasts for several other people. So before we get into that, why don't you talk about, or before we get into some other stuff, why don't you talk about your podcasting journey and your services a little bit, and tell everybody a little bit about that and that's
Sure.
involved in.
Yeah. So my podcast journey actually starts in a really weird space. I'm actually a full-time paramedic. And so I had time to start a new business on the side. About 8 years ago, I started a voiceover business for reading books and reading commercials and e-learning and whatever, characters, all that kind of stuff. Well, it didn't take long for me to start getting hired to do intros and outros for podcasts. Like, hey, welcome to, blah, blah, blah show and whatever it was. And that led to the couple of people that I was doing voiceovers for. One person in particular reached out to me and said, hey, I have this intro. I have this idea for a podcast, but I have no idea how to do it. Do you know how to do a podcast? And can you help me? And I'm like, at the time, I had no clue how to do podcasts. I wasn't a podcaster. And this was probably about 6 years ago was when all this went down. So yeah, my friend, who I say a friend because he eventually became a friend, asked me to start, helping him with podcasts. So I started diving in, learning how to do podcasts. And then it got to the point where he asked me to be a co-host on his podcast, and we started a sports talk podcast. And then it spun into another. We basically created 4 podcasts. He kept on wanting to do new podcasts with new ideas and new topics that he wanted to cover. And the one thing about podcasting from scratch like that is at least I learned all the ways not to do podcasts and all of the hurdles and all of the technical details that so many people learn on that start that process that they go through. Fast forward, 6 years, I meet a podcasting mentorship group and I start podcasting in a completely different way. I started my own podcast where I was always someone's co-host, or I was a producer helping behind the scenes. But the system that I have now, we fine-tuned my system. I fine-tuned it to the point where I got with my my podcast mentoring group. They were like, hey, you know a lot about podcasting. Where did you learn it all from? I'm like, I learned it the hard way. And one of the gentlemen made a suggestion that I start becoming essentially a coach. I don't call myself a coach. I call myself a podcast business strategist, because what I do is I help people create a podcast that supports their business. And then when it comes to coaching them, I can coach them on audio because I'm a voiceover actor. I can coach them on video like I just did with Nick, but that's all been chopped out, by the way. I can coach them on getting people on their podcast and just the overall general back end of podcasting, which so many people don't want to do. And if you're a busy business person that needs to grow your business through podcasting, but you have more time to put into your business and you don't want to put it into podcasting, but you understand that podcasting is a very important, marketing tool, which it is. It's my number one marketing tool. It's my number one lead generator is podcasting. Same thing. I know that because that's what I've instructed Nick on. He's had a couple of things we're going to talk about today. It's all come about from his podcasting. They would have never been presented to him unless it was podcasting. So my philosophy in podcasting is podcasting for lead generation / getting to know your ideal client, people that you want to collaborate with, and people that you want to partner up with. Having your own podcast gives you that ability to control who you meet with, who you get introduced to, who you record with. If you're only going on people's podcasts, you're subject to all of their time frames. When you own your own podcast, like I've instructed Nick to do, and like I have the people that I want to get to know on my podcast, and I can say from my experience, and Nick can share from his experience. The guests that he's had come on has helped him build his business, and that's what it's all about.
Yep. It's all about the networking. And what I love about you is that you're so passionate about it. And if anybody signed up with you, which you guys have been hearing a commercial at the beginning of every podcast for several months now, what I love about you is you give 150% all of
thanks.
And,
thanks.
And you really take time. I mean, I have access to you, whether it's texting, email, calling. I mean, you're able to help me with anything. And we really have become dear friends. And
yep. We've even seen each other in person because we live in the same city.
We have. We've had some great donuts together.
Snyder's Bakery from Westerville.
Yes. Come on, Snyder's. We need a sponsor.
And I tell you what, the time I brought you lunch, you wanted Taco Bell, and I brought you Taco Bell. I'm honest with you. That's the first time I had Taco Bell in years, and it was so delicious.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Taco Bell for me is like twice a week occurrence if I can afford it. So, I'm a huge Taco Bell fan. And Snyder's Bakery, sadly, I haven't had Snyder's Bakery since we had it together, but it was very good, and I'll never forget it. So we're going to put Kyle's information as far as podcasting in the show notes. I think it's there all the time anyway. If not, it should be.
Yeah.
But we're going to put it there. And if you're really saying, man, I have a message, I have a story that everybody needs to hear, get in touch with Kyle today. Honestly, you will not be sorry. His pricing is detailed to what you need. He can do everything from getting you guests to putting you in touch with the right people, which is how I got the book deal that I got, because he said, hey, I came in contact with this lady in California, Kat Paz, also known as Katrina, who is working on this book called Trailblazing and Transforming, and we'll have a graphic that is on the screen while we're talking about this. But and so Kyle is the reason that I was able to be a part of that book. I'm chapter 5, shameless plug, breaking the mold.
And by the way, I was just told that you are the only male in the book author.
Yes.
And you and one other person are the longest chapter. So you've got more of your story than anything. Yeah.
Really?
I was talking to Kat the other day about that.
Yeah. So, guys, really, really check that out. You can get it on Kindle and you can get it in paperback. And you don't necessarily need a Kindle to get the book. You just need the Kindle app. That's what Kat told me. You just need the
Mhm.
Kindle app to get the book. And we have other things in the works. An audiobook is coming. I just saw her advertise it the other day. Up next is the audio version, and then potentially we hope to get an ebook version out. So get this book. It's incredible, and it's going to help a lot of people
Yeah.
with
And
this.
it's a bestseller in its space. It's held there for two. It was initially, yeah, it's a bestseller in its space, and it's held there for ever since it launched. So that's been 3 weeks, and so it's still holding as the bestseller. So yeah.
Yeah, so continue to make that happen. Maybe we could get Oprah to choose it as her book club select.
Yeah. I
I
don't
don't
think she's, yeah, who knows?
I don't know. Maybe
You never know. You never know. You got to dream big.
yes, gotta dream big. So Kyle, let's talk about because you have an extensive background with the disability community, not only because you're a paramedic and you take people back and forth. Um, But I want you to talk about that. Didn't you have some involvement with like Special Olympics or something?
Yeah, Nick, I actually have, I was involved with the Special Olympics back when I was in, I believe it was high school. So I'm trying to figure out where my introduction to this disabled started. I really believe it started back, if I really think deep enough, my aunt had a best friend that was in a wheelchair and um, had some sort of disease she was born into that caused her not to be able to walk. Um,
Right.
and so I remember as a young child going over to her house and seeing in general all the things that have to happen inside of a home with a wheelchair bound person. And so it wasn't something that was shocking to me as I went through my life and started meeting more disabled people. Well, fast forward to probably my early teens, middle teens. I don't think I was driving yet because I had to go with my neighbor, but my neighbor, she was in charge, Miss Gina Freeman. I still see her every once in a while, love her to death. Every once in a while, I see her out in the community. But she was one of the directors at Ohio State in the disability services. I was a young football player, strapping young man, and I was, one of the kids that, I helped shovel her walks and mow her lawn sometimes. And it was one of those things where she said, "Hey, would you want to, come help us at the Special Olympics?" And even more so than that, she asked me if I could help at one of the summer camps during a couple of the summers. There's 2 or 3 summers in a row there that I would go to a summer camp here locally in central Ohio and actually do caregiving and help with, I was an, able-bodied person that would help people transfer to their chairs, transfer to their bed, that kind of thing during the summer camp. So I worked, and that was all volunteer stuff. And I worked with that for years. And then fast forward into the the healthcare field, dealing with people that have become paraplegics and on a ventilator, and caring for them and getting them to be healthy again, and or at least to be able to be discharged or rehab. We had a rehab hospital at Ohio State, so my entire life I've been around the disabled community. We all know, and you've had people on your show that aren't just physically disabled, but they could be impairment disabled or mentally disabled as well. And I was labeled as a child. I don't know if it's in the same category, but learning disabled. That's what they called it back then. Now they call it an IEP or ADHD or what have you, or what I'm not sure all the new like technical words now. But back when I was in elementary school, I was labeled with the word disabled, learning. Kyle, you're in LD classes, learning disabled classes. So it was one of those things where I didn't see myself as a physical disabled person, but I was labeled as a disabled person back in the day. And I went through middle school, high school, college, all with those specialty type of labels that back then was the word disabled. So it's one of those things where it's not a a weird word for me to say or hear or talk to somebody about. And when people need the help they need, it's just in my DNA. My mom and dad were always very helpful with charity and people they own properties and had made sure that things were accessible for any of our tenants that may be physically disabled and need wheelchair access. I remember building stuff with my dad to make sure that our tenants could get in and out of the house properly and make sure it was compliant. So I've been around it for forever. And, meeting you and getting back into this world and meeting Kat and meeting all of your guests, because of course I edit your shows. And so I vicariously meet them. It's just, there's a lot of amazing people out there wanting to do amazing stuff. Hearing your stories about the struggles you've had, not, being denied to live on your own, but then doing it and overcoming that. And then the whole job thing, and that you're not fit for a job, but then they won't support you with this job that you've basically done as an entrepreneur. It's just one of those things where, there's advocacy and then there's action. And I think that you're somebody who has taken action, and I've got to keep my game up so that I can support your action.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. You said something, and I just had to ask this out of curiosity, because you said you transferred people from their bed to their chair. I'm assuming they did not have Hoyer lifts then, or did they? And did it do a number on your back?
Well, I was young back then, so I could lift a lot more. No, they didn't. I do. I do know what a Hoyer lift is, and we will utilize a Hoyer lift at any cost now when it comes to people that we go transfer to the hospital, or if we go to their home and they're sick. If they've got a Hoyer lift, I'm like, yep, bring that over here. Because even with a bunch of people around, the main thing was we just had numbers. I think that was the thing back then. If I can recall correctly, when we were doing the summer camps, it was just sheer numbers, and we would just have people around and get them on a sheet or a blanket and lift them over and stuff.
Yeah, because
the complete non-way that you want to do it, but you adapt and overcome when you're at a summer camp, right?
Well, I know my mom, God bless her, she ruined her back picking me up for several years. She's got a herniated disc now and all that stuff. So if you're able to get, a Hoyer lift, and you're dealing with somebody who's in a wheelchair, get one, because it'll save your back a ton of pain. So be sure. I also want to back up and get into, did you feel any way treated differently because of your learning disability? Did you feel like people treated as if you were slower because of
I was bullied, and it was 100%. Why are you going to a special class, Kyle? And I would go, like in elementary school, I would go to my homeroom, and then as soon as my homeroom was done, I would leave. Then I would show back up for lunch and recess, and then I would leave again, and then show up for the end of the day. So I was in a classroom not by myself. I was with other LD students. And like I said, this was the late 70s, early 80s. So we didn't have the programs that we had. We actually moved to the town I live in now and where I grew up. We moved here because their school district was very aggressive and very progressive about the LD community for child learning. So I learned a lot of things differently than most. I needed to learn things with hands-on and explanation and show and tell type of stuff when I was younger. But it got to the point where my LD teachers, I actually just had coffee with one of my very first, very influential learning disabled teachers. She had moved back to Central Ohio last year, and I finally got a chance to see her. We've been connected on Facebook for years, but I actually got a chance to see her, and it was really cool. We both were. It was very emotional because she was at the beginning of her career for the LD teacher side of things, and I was one of her first students. So it was, and now we're 35 years later we reconnect. So it was pretty cool. But what happened eventually was, because they had to teach me in a different manner, I learned things, and I I'm not a stupid, I'm a paramedic. I'm a respiratory therapist. I do construction. I taught myself how to voiceover. I taught myself how to podcast. I'm not a dumb person. LD doesn't mean dumb. It's just, you have to learn it a little bit differently. And so that word disabled was really kind of falsely, labeled back in the day. But nonetheless, with myself, I got to the point by the time I got to high school and I started getting straight A's, I had the same people that were bullying me in elementary and junior high coming up to me like, "Hey, Kyle, can you help me study? How are you getting such good grades?" And that's its own little underhand, how are you getting such good grades? And it's just one of those things where, it eventually got to the point where people saw that, there was probably a lot more kids back then that had issues with how to learn. I was just lucky enough that my mom and dad had me tested and had me go into a different category of learning with that LD program. And I don't see it as anything but I was successful in school because of it, not in spite of it.
Yeah, I don't understand what the stigma is about. If you have to go to some type of special learning, like, why is that something for kids to make fun of? Like, I've never.
It's different. I mean, it's different. It's not the norm. I mean, luckily we're in a much different world nowadays, and it's much more accepting.
So Kyle, we've been working together since, I don't know, last August or July. I know consistently. August.
I think we met in May, didn't we meet about a year ago with that initial phone call?
Yeah, we did. And then I broke my foot.
Yeah.
I think we met earlier than that. I think we met like in February because we're supposed to start working together in March of last year. And then I broke my foot. So there was time in between there. It's been such a joy to work with you, as I said, and I know you feel the same way. At least I hope.
I do. Yeah, I do. You're one funny guy, dude.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you've learned working with me, and what are just some of the things that really stick out to you about my story and what we're working through together?
Right. Well, one of the things that I admire about you, Nick, is just your perseverance. Like you're not going to just lay down. You're not going to just take the norm. The thing that always sticks out of my head from some of the things that you've, because I've edited all of your content. So I'm not saying I've listened to every single last minute when I edit it, but I do go back and I listen to your podcast. So what I've picked up is the cookie cutter concept is, there's a path for some disabled individuals to get jobs and to get support. And for whatever reason, you don't fit in those categories and they don't have anything for you. And you're like, well, that's unacceptable. This is 2025. There is new technology out there that can get disabled individuals a different type of income revenue or job or support. And they're just not willing to help you in that, even when we have literally laid it out for them. Hey, this is the path that Nick is going through to help, increase his and build a business. And they were just dumbfounded like that. Like we were talking a foreign language to them. And, but then, the perseverance that you have and the not taking, hearing your story about how people told you that you would never live on your own. You live on your own now. You would never, all these things that they told you wouldn't do, you've overcome it. And this is just yet another one. Oh, you're not employable, but they're trying to help you get a job. I mean, it's this weird conundrum that's like crazy to me. And, with the help of your brother financially and soon to be your GoFundMe account to help you financially with building your podcast, because building a good podcast to make money at it and to get hired to go do the stuff that you want to do, public speaking, writing a book, that kind of stuff, that takes, that isn't just something that you do where it's, it's all free. There's services that you have to have. There's software that we have to use, that we have to purchase to make sure that all, like your YouTube channel, the reason why your YouTube channel is growing is because of the software that I use and plug into your shorts and all the content that way. And we're just scratching the surface. Could you have I'm not a social media manager, but could you have one of those eventually? Yes. Well, those people cost money. So the more that people, listen to your shows and help support you through your GoFundMe account, specifically for your podcast to support it. I think that's something that you and I are going to be launching in every episode from now on, is talking about that, to make sure that people, that if they're getting this content and they're enjoying this content and enjoying your story and giving them hope through your stories and through your guests, if they can, and those people that are your TikTok followers, which is, you're my one client that has more TikTok followers than in all of them put together. and for you to get out there and say, hey, I have a donation page to help support my content, is one way that, because you're bringing quality people to the table that have great things to share in the disability community, and people that are non-disabled, so they have an idea of the struggles and the limitations that the government and services put on the disabled. I mean, the story about your food budget getting cut in almost 2/3, that's just dumbfounding to me. Why would they cut your food budget to lower than poverty level when food prices are going up?
Yeah, $63 a month is what I receive.
Wow.
Stamps. And it's all because
But that was down from like 200 and some, right? You were getting 200 and some a month, right?
Yeah, I was getting 200. Then they cut it down to, I was getting over $200. And then they cut it down to like 70. And then they said, we're going to cut you down to even more. And the reason being is because where I live in my apartment, I don't pay utilities. I just pay my rent. So because of that, the government says, "Oh, you don't pay enough money out of the shoestring that we give you, so we're gonna cut that shoestring even shorter, and we're gonna make you suffer." And my case manager tells me all the time, food stamps is just supplemental income. They're thinking that you have other sources of income. Yeah, and my other source of income is from the government. And they don't give me enough either, So that's why I say, Kyle, all the time when I go to these advocacy meetings that honestly turn into bitching sessions about, don't cut my Medicaid, don't cut my Medicare, don't cut my Social Security. I'm like, why are you guys still focused on that? You guys are so highly intelligent. There's a lot of people with disabilities that if they would let us, we could really kick ass and change the world. And, but, they've been so, the government's told us that we have to live on these government benefits the rest of our lives for disability. And my goal through everything that I do is to say, no, you don't. You don't have to. Your disability does not have to limit you.
Right. Well, and you're a perfect example. That's why I think you're such an advocate, and a true advocate, and a true someone who is doing the hard work to prove to everyone, the people that are out there in the same situation as you, the people that say that you're not, all the naysayers that are supposed to help, you're proving them wrong by not falling in and accepting their cookie cutter programs. And, and it's, your podcast is getting more successful. I see it grow. I see the numbers. I see people being added to your subscriptions. I see the downloads and listens, the thousands of people that watch your shorts, not only you, but your guests. And, this is something that's going to grow. You've got a book now that people can purchase, which you can make money on. You're going to have speaking engagements. You've already been asked to be a part of a couple of those. You've already been hired once to come on a show. And I mean, so you're a professional speaker, you're a professional podcaster. It's just at the beginning stages. And to support Nick and his show is going to help him accelerate to get to a spot where he can just more and more prove to all the naysayers that there's a different way, and really be a trailblazer in a new path. I mean, that's perfect name for that book right now.
Yeah, it is. Can't really, with the exception of the title being way too damn long.
Yeah, well, after the trailblazing, after the first two words, then it goes with entrepreneur in there and everything. But it is what it is. I mean, it's I can't wait to get my copy. I've ordered a few copies. Because one, I'm going to have you sign it, and I didn't realize this, but I'm actually acknowledged in there as well as a co-producer, because I'm helping you produce your version, because people may or may not know you're legally blind. So it's very hard for you to do it. That's why you and I work so good together. And that you read your book out loud, then I transcribed it with the software that I use for your podcast, put it back into format so you could in a book format, and then we went and read it. I read it to you line by line, and we changed things, and it was a great experience. I feel like not a co-author, because I didn't help with the words that were coming out of your mouth. I just helped facilitate the ability to correct and get it in a format where I could read it out loud to you, so you could hear how it sounded and then make the changes that needed to be made. It was a great experience. I can't wait to help you on your next book, because I know you have more eventually.
Yeah, on my first full book, I will have more. And it was so great because I just recorded what I said into my phone, and then I sent it to you, and we were able to format it that way. And it just took everything I said and just formed. Now, there were some things I said, Kyle, that's too wordy. We need to change that. That doesn't sound like me, and it just worked out so well. And I can't wait for people to get their hands on it and read it. And the sad thing is, I'm in a state, I'm in Ohio, that says everyone is employable. Ohio is an equal opportunity employer. And I've said this before on my podcast. No, you're not. Because I've been told by 2 counties in the state of Ohio that there's nothing they can do to help me. And I've been told by 1 county in the state of Indiana that there's nothing they can do to help me. So the system has failed me. And I know I'm not the only one that it's failed, because the agency that is used to help people get jobs here in the state of Ohio, only 34,000 people with disabilities are gainfully employed by the state of Ohio. And those are their numbers that have came out on the Ohioans with Opportunities with Disabilities Facebook page. 34,000 people. And yes, I'm calling people out because I would be a hypocrite not to, because my mantra at the beginning and end of every podcast is speak up, speak out, and speak loud. And I'm speaking loud and saying that this needs to change. If you're going to have a mantra that everyone's employable, and that, first of all, that needs to change, because there are people who aren't, sadly, because of their conditions. But if you're going to have that mantra, then you need to bust your ass and do anything you can to make that come to pass. And it's really simple for someone like me. What frustrates me is, in a few weeks, I'm going to have my neighbor who lives across the hall from me on my podcast. He's in a wheelchair just like me. He's intelligent just like me. He's probably more intelligent, more than me, because he's got 3 degrees, and he has cerebral palsy just like I do. And he's a job coach, and he went through some of the same processes that I did. But for some reason, they were able to help him. But I have, quote, nothing to offer an employer.
Well, and I know you do. Clearly, you do. I mean, you have the ability to get to an employer as well with your services that you have with your van, with the people that provide you transportation.
Right.
But I also kind of have a feeling that you're not kind of one of the guys that wants to work for the man. You kind of want to be in control of your own destiny. And I think the entrepreneurial path, they don't have an option for the entrepreneurial path, and
They
that's the issue. Like, so that's, I think, if there's any way we can get a hold of someone that they can expose the fact that they have no way of supporting a very big, I mean, entrepreneurs, there's a lot of people talking about entrepreneurialism in our world nowadays. And it takes up a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of people that make their money because of entrepreneurialism. And it's not just working for a corporation. So it's something that they need to address. It's something that they need to come up with a program. And quite frankly, it would be a great suggestion if you would, once you get a hold of the right person. And I know you will, because you're continuously asking different people to be on your show, on your podcast. So one of these days when you meet that right person, you say, hey, listen, I want to help you guys create an entrepreneurial path for the folks that are like me, that are told we can't have a physical job, that we're unemployable, but we have the knowledge and we have the drive to do something in the entrepreneurial world, whatever that is. So, all we were asking them to do is just support the back end, support the software that it takes to do your podcast, support the time it takes for a producer to produce that. And they didn't, that was completely foreign language to them. And I just don't get it. I don't understand why they wouldn't support someone in a way to, put money into that person to go to a physical place, but they're not willing to put money into someone who is got a clear path on how they can, grow their business. That's an entrepreneurial path.
Well, and one thing they said, so I said I wanted to start my own business, and they were a little late in being honest with me and saying that our agency doesn't really do a lot of self-employment. Well, hello, get with the program. It's 2005. I mean, right. Nearly everybody in this country, if you're worth your salt, you have a side hustle outside of your 9-to-5 job, because you're trying.
I have 3.
You're trying to do more than make ends meet. You want to enjoy life.
Yep.
And one of the craziest things, and please don't edit this out, but one of the because I want to bring it up. I had somebody tell me, everybody during COVID was starting their own businesses in their house, and it was illegal. And I'm going, what? Yeah, and they were like, yeah, because of zoning purposes and blah blah blah. That doesn't make sense, because even before COVID, people were starting businesses in their house. Now, right. I understand that, if I was in an assisted living facility, there is policies out there where if someone does live in an assisted living facility, for some reason, they cannot have a business in their address, where they live at an assisted living facility. I guess it's because it's a government facility. I have no idea.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah.
But, I really strongly sometimes feel, Kyle, that the only people America doesn't want to have the American dream is people with disabilities. And if we're going to have it, then we have to drag ourselves along. And it's going to take a long time. And that's why I call out all the time for politicians to come on the show and say, what are you doing to improve the lives of people with disabilities? Because honestly, on either side, I haven't seen it happen in my lifetime. Oh, we have the ADA, whoop-de-doo. It hasn't been changed in 35 years. Just because we can get into a building doesn't mean that it's what it needs to be.
Right.
Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, that's okay. No, that's one reason why you have this podcast, because there could be people out there listening to this that are just as frustrated as you, and it takes, strength in numbers. You get those people to follow you and support you and start commenting on your stuff, and maybe even come on your show and talk about their experience so more people hear about it. It's that snowball. You're definitely started a snowball on episode 1, in my opinion, and now you're at episode 39, and soon to, soon to have 40 and 45. And the one thing that I love about you, Nick, is you are so adamant about making sure that you don't miss a week. You've been in the hospital in the past. You like one time you even wanted to, we did miss a week with that, but you wanted to do the podcast from your hospital bed, and I was like, okay, I'm down. I'd love to do that. Like, I'm totally fine. Let's get your phone up and you just do a monologue in the hospital bed. That'd be great. But it's one of those things where we didn't do that. We let you rest, and I was like, no, Nick, let's just let you rest. I mentioned to you back then because, of course, I'm very familiar with some of the ailments that you've shared with me because of my medical background, and the time that I spent in hospitals treating people like yourself. So I was like, nope, we're gonna pause for a couple of weeks until you're healthy and strong again. And but you were wanting to do it. You were dry. You were wanting to push forward. I mean, you could barely even speak in full sentences, and you're still wanting to do a podcast. That's what I love about Nicholas Comstock, is he has no give up. He doesn't give up. He just plugs through, and he pushes, and he changes what everybody feels is the norm. Love him.
Last week when I shot this episode, I had just came out of the ER when I shot last week.
Yeah, and you sound better already. Like, I can tell. Like, I listened to your podcast last week with your guest, and I was like, oh, Nick's struggling. He's got some congestion, and he's having a hard time, breathing and completing full sentences. But you sound much better this week.
Yeah. And I had literally just fallen asleep for a couple hours, and then I said, I got to get up and film a show, and I filmed the show. And I had been through hell in the ER the night before. So when I tell you I am ready, that's one thing my dad has instilled in me, is that work ethic. And work ethic shouldn't stop just because you have a disability. And that's one thing. My dad and I have had our relationship issues through the years, but that's one thing that he's instilled in me is, go to work when you're sick, work through the pain. And he's done that. He works for a major company, and he's done that for over 30 years. And that's what's instilled in me, is work when you're sick, work when you don't feel well, push through it, and obviously take care of yourself, but don't be a wimp. Yeah.
Well, we all know that, knowing you for the last year, you're definitely not a whip, Nick. You're definitely not a whip.
No. Great. I've enjoyed doing this episode with you, Kyle, and we'll do more.
Absolutely.
I'm eventually going to be on your podcast. And
Yep. And I want to go. I'm hoping to go live with you soon too, in a couple of groups that I belong to on Facebook, just to kind of help promote your book. So if everybody's listening, go buy Nick's book. Go. We'll put the link in the comments to go purchase his book from Amazon. He'll have a specific link for him specifically, so you're supporting him. And of course, the link to Nick's GoFundMe page will be in there as well. Nick and I are going to work on how to, promote that GoFundMe page on every episode from now on. But it's one of those things. Or Nick, what do you have to say about your GoFundMe and what you want people to know about that?
Well, for right now, we're going to update it, but for right now, it's specifically about. I started it a year ago because I needed to get my own handicap accessible van, and I still do. Because right now I have an agency that drives me around, and I'm very grateful for them because it took me a long time just to get consistent transportation. But I need my own accessible van because I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm going to start traveling across the country and running the wheels off the thing. And I need it because right now with my home healthcare agency, they are the only ones that are able to drive. Where if I get it myself and I have full coverage, I can have, if Kyle and I want to go to a speaking engagement together, he can drive me. If, my best friend wants to come take me out for dinner, they can drive me, you know.
Gotcha.
So, and I need this, and we've raised about the GoFundMe says about $5,000, but I've had some other people be extremely generous, so it's actually about $7,000. And the original goal was $50,000. Like I said, we're going to change that because I need to turn it into more of a podcasting business running type of thing. I got to keep Kyle.
Yeah, I think it can be both. I think it could support both, where a portion of it could be the podcasting stuff, and then the other portion can keep on growing for the van. So yeah, I think it could be both. It's just a matter of how you state it when people get there. You know what I mean? Like once they go to donate, they see exactly what it's going for, because people are going to want to know that. And of course, that's all a write off. Anytime I've ever donated to a GoFundMe, I can write that off. So, but yeah, so that link will be in the link in the show notes, of course. So we can start getting that to support everything that you're doing on your own path.
Yeah, because that's what I've been told to do several times. Nick, you're going to have to carve your own path. So here I am, because I've been told I have no other option. So this has to work, and it will work.
It is working. It is working. It's just not as fast as you want it. I mean, so this GoFundMe, and keep on doing the weekly stuff. You just like I'll never forget what Dory says in Nemo. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming.
Yeah. Like Dory moved to England.
I don't know. The actress moved to England. The fish is still in the sea, in my opinion.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right.
Dory moved to England, but anyway. But I've had so much fun doing this episode with Kyle. You guys, this is the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. I will see you next week. Have a great week, everybody.